Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. We are going to be talking about dungeon walls today. Now I will say right off the bat that I take my hat off to anybody who uses modular dungeon tiles and creates walls for them in massive sets. I simply don't have the time. I do know how to do them and I'm going to be going through a few techniques and show you that. But realistically I don't have the time to put into a project as large as that to get a whole set so that it's applicable basically for any dungeon that you're going to come up with. Now my preferred method for setting out a dungeon is to use something like this. This is a portable gaming area. I showed you how to do one in an earlier video. I'll link it again down below. This one is a smaller version of the one we did because that one was stupidly massive. It took myself and my son maybe about 3 evenings to get this done, and it is foldable, portable, double-sided, outdoor on there, indoor on here. And it's obviously gridded out so that it's applicable for games of D&D, and if you want a 10-foot wide corridor, there you go, there's a 10-foot wide corridor. Rooms can be blocked out in the same way, or you can cut them out of paper and just place it down. It doesn't look brilliant, but it certainly does the job, and something like this has served myself and my players well for the better part of 15 years. However, you guys are crafters and you want to do something a little bit prettier and more imposing. So what have I done already? Well, any dungeon needs an entrance, and this is a set of stairs. I've made it in 2 parts. So the bottom step can go like that and be placed essentially anywhere on the board, because you don't necessarily come in at the edge, or if you are coming in at the edge then it will just slot on like that. I'll bring it a bit closer to the camera so that you can see how I've made it. I haven't painted it, essentially so that I can show you the construction method. So it's a 2-part model. Foam card. I've tiled the top in exactly the same way that I've done the game board, and just put a little bit of sand around the edges so that you can't see the cut sort of polystyrene stuff in the middle of foam card. This again, foam card, sand and the tiles. All I've done is take a few squares or oblongs of foam card, stacked them up, glued them together, popped some walls on, tiled the top, again sand around to hide the joins. Now this is a prime example of the first and probably one of the easiest ways to make dungeon walls. As you can see, walls there, and all it is foam card standing upright, a bit of texture over the top, whether or not you're using textured paint or straight sand like I have. After there's been a paint job, that won't look too bad. It's certainly good enough for pretty much most games. In all of the pieces that I show you today, I'm not going to show you them being painted. There's no point to that. It is essentially going to be a either base coat of black or a dark grey, and then a light grey dry brush. So I will show you the finished products, and that one can be painted off camera. Now there's a couple of things I should probably mention before we go much further. First of all, none of the techniques that I am going to show you today use XPS foam. Some places, like down here, you can't actually get hold of the stuff, so it's other materials we're going to be using. The second is that all of the techniques that I'm going to be showing you are designed to be freestanding on a game board rather than for use with dungeon tiles. If however it is dungeon tiles you're into, any of the techniques that I show you, you can simply glue a little tab, and I've used clear plastic that's just been reclaimed from some packaging, and that will hook quite nicely under a dungeon tile, and yeah, that's not going to fall over. You can also use this for the freestanding technique, and the reason why I used clear rather than just a piece of scrap card is, yes, it does help it stand upright better, but you don't necessarily lose all of that detail underneath if for some reason, you know, it's a more aesthetic thing. Okay, so clear plastic, easy enough to come by. Use that for your support tabs if that is the direction that you're going in. Now, the first method I'm going to show you is by far and away the most time consuming and fiddly, but it's got to be said, the end result is possibly worth it. It does look good. And that is going back to our old friend camping foam. Now, I showed you how to cut blocks of this when we did the ruined wall terrain, and we're going to cut blocks out of it in exactly the same way. If you recall, it is the edge of the block that is going to be facing on the wall, so we need to cut some strips of that. We're going to need quite a few of them. Just in terms of measurements, your standard game tile is 25mm. Depending on the height you want your wall, if you want it to be above head height on the character, then you're going to need your wall to be around about, I would say, perhaps the 50mm. Now this I have measured it being 7mm, so that means I'm going to need 7 rows of this to get the height. And I don't know about you, but a block that is 25mm long is really just too big for a brick. We want half that, so each of your bricks should be around about 12.5mm. That is so that you'll get 2 bricks per tile and work them up. I will get on with cutting these. So blocks have been cut out just using scissors, so we get that texture on the cut side. And this is fast grab cement, useful for foam and rubber. Here goes. And you just build it up like that. I'll get on with this and show you the finished piece. All glued together, still a little bit flimsy at the moment, but that will grab and take, and as you can see, it's just the right size for one dungeon tile. Now, that probably took me about 10-15 minutes just for one tile, and no, I haven't put a clip onto it. So unless you are a masochist, then we really do need something that's a little bit faster than that. Let's try something with a little bit more advanced tools than what we've just used. Now, this is an electric poker work tool. It's the kind of thing that you use for charring wood and making designs in it. It is not a soldering iron. Now, as an ex-electronics technician, do not use a soldering iron to do what I am about to do. If you don't have something like this, and they are quite a specialized tool, then you can get exactly the same result by getting a small nail and a pair of pliers, holding it into a candle flame and then using it to melt your foam. Do not, please ruin a soldering iron by using it for what I'm about to show you. So what I have done is cut out 4 strips. I'm going to cut them in half eventually, and once 7 of them are stacked, that will give us the height of our wall. But instead of cutting them into blocks, I am simply going to use my tool to mark where those bricks should be. I'll get on with this and check back in with you once we've constructed it. So, all glued together. There's a 20 foot or 4 section wall tile. Now, yes, it does have problems standing up by itself. You can either use the clip under method, where is it, like that, or because there's one you've already made, they do just lock together. Freestanding corner. I'll show it to the camera so it's a bit better looking. Oh, that's definitely the long-winded method of making dungeon walls, and probably the hardest. Now, block work or dressed stone blocks for your walls is by far the most time-consuming method of doing it. What are the materials? Well, if you had XPS foam, that takes draw lines very easily, and you can rough it up with the good old ball of metal foil trick, and that looks like rocks and it'll take a paint job really nicely. EPS foam, which everyone can get hold of, is a different kettle of fish. Because it's made of these crumbly little balls, trying to press into it with anything, you're basically just going to break it apart. So if you're looking at putting block work into something like this, it can be done, but again, it's something which is very time consuming. I'll show you on this piece of scrap. Now, it will, if you're very gentle with your knife, take a cut, and then you can just gently saw in at an angle and pick that excess out like that, and that's great for the horizontal wall lines, and if you're at an edge, the vertical ones are quite easy as well. But just get another horizontal one there, shorten my blade slightly. Getting those ones in the middle of a wall where you can't use your knife on a more flat angle does give you that problem of breaking bobbles out. It can be done. Make sure you're using a really sharp knife, but again, it's very time consuming. Possible, and you know, once you've got the outline there, if you don't like the texture of the bobbly EPS foam, then you can just put a texture coat of something like that. You've got grid lines, not a problem. However, if you happen to be lucky enough like me, a hot wire knife is going to be far better for this kind of job. Just wait till she heats up. Just nice and gentle. And because it's a knife and has that edge to it, it's very easy to do that brickwork. I'll finish this off and we'll move on to the next one. Oh, before I forget, done the wall, all done, but does have a little bit of a problem, certainly when we're talking about a freestanding one. The solution, now these are a couple of small nails. If you can get larger ones, so much the better, but I'm just going to force that into the side there and there, and now that has been weighted at the bottom. A sneeze is still going to knock it over, but I'll get it at the right angle for the camera. Okay, In fact, what kind of angle do we need to get it at before it will fall over? Almost 45 degrees. Okay. Because we've weight at the bottom, lowered the centre of gravity, far more stable. Okay. Alright, let's move on to rough textured walls. Now, I've got two 40-foot wall sections. EPS foam, I have already weighted them, and the quickest texture method, apart from actually using a texture coat or sand or anything like that, is the good old watered down PVA and tissue trick. So let's just get some piece of tissue paper, cut the piece entirely and get that tissue paper on and just dab it down. I'll get around and cover these. Very quick texture job, ready to be painted. And of course the really good thing about being able to use EPS foam and knowing how to texture it really quickly is that we can just get big scrap pieces that you get all over the place and just straight out make rooms or caverns with it. This is 50mm stuff, so it's the height of all of the rest of the things that I've been doing, and I may as well use my hot knife and just get on and make some rooms. That looks like a 10 by 20 to me. I'll get some more done. So, loads of interesting shape cut out. Obviously that was the original one I did. Smaller, complex, connected. Windy tunnel. And the good thing about that is you can make it as wide or as narrow as you want to, depending on what you have down there and what you want to do with your players. And D&D would not be complete without a nice large cavern area so that your players can let off fireballs to their heart's content. And of course with the offcuts that have come out, you've even got some rock pillars to use as scatter terrain in the middle. I'll get this roughed up and get a paint job on everything, and we'll see what the collection is starting to look like. Well, again, from one crafting session it's not too bad a haul. I say one crafting session, realistically an afternoon and 3 evenings, and realistically that was just to allow drying time for the tissue texture coat. Once when it was first applied, allow it to dry overnight, and then once the base coat was on, again allow it to dry overnight. All in all, to be honest, not my favourite build. There's an awful lot of work, and the set realistically isn't anywhere big enough to allow, you know, a real diversity in the kind of dungeon that you can do. But we will be coming back to this over time. I've still got to show you how to add things like doors and other dungeon features and things like that. We'll be doing those in videos later on. But big cavern, some rock pillars to go in with it, some of which were just done from offcuts, and they'll double up with the mountain set that was done in a previous video. A few other smaller rooms, the entrance obviously, nice windy tunnel, and an amount of walls in different styles. Let's pull up a picture of the 4 different wall styles now so we can just have a talk about the differences between them. The first one, and the best looking one as far as I'm concerned, is the one made from individual blocks, but it is so time consuming that I realistically can't afford to go down that path. It's a shame because I do like the look of it. The ones made from the foam strips, not so much, but they do start looking a little bit more regular and a little bit more unrealistic. The 2 larger sets I made, the first one was straight polystyrene with the hot wire cutter. Now, very quick to make. I did a speed trial with those versus the polystyrene and tissue paper, and time-wise it was round about the same. but to my mind it just doesn't look nice. It looks really artificial. Maybe if you've got access to XPS foam and you've got the ability to rough up the blocks afterwards, it's going to look far better. I don't know. Unfortunately, I don't have access to the XPS. But for fast and easy and usable, then the polystyrene with the tissue paper coating and a quick dry brush, while it doesn't look like brickwork or block work, it is certainly functional enough for you to be able to get away with using that in a dungeon. And to be perfectly honest, it does fit in with the style of the other rooms and things like that. So yes, we will be coming back to this, as I said, but that's about it for this video. Hope you've liked it. Do the usual thing, hit the subscribe button, ring notification bells. Otherwise, I'll see you next time, and next time's going to be a good one. I'm looking forward to it.